Yeah.
So how are you doing today? Everything okay?
I'm good. Yeah, we're good today.
That's awesome.
All
Well, today I'm very excited to talk to you because I know that you know a lot about things that a lot of people should know about, but they don't because when they call to talk with agents in your industry, they just call, they get a number, they tell them the number, then they pay the number, right? Like they don't really understand
yeah,
what it is. So, for
right.
everybody that's out there listening today, we're talking to Miss Cyndi Lawrence, a amazing insurance agent, owns her own brokerage. They call them brokerages, right? Insurance
Right.
brokerage here in the great state of Texas,
Woohoo.
best state in the country. But she's come on today to talk with us about insurance and then a lot of other things that she is involved with and does. She's uh, a very big advocate of veterans, which of course I like being a veteran myself, and I appreciate that. And we also, from us to you, want to thank your son for his service because I know that he's out there doing his part to serve the country. So we really, really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And without further ado, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can go into talking about all kinds of other things.
Okay. Sounds great. Good morning. I am Cyndi Lawrence, and I am the owner of the Lawrence Agency, which is an insurance agency to commercial, homes, auto. That's kind of how me and Matt met, doing veterans seminar. He was the mortgage lending, I was the insurance. And just like Matt said, I love helping out with the veterans in any way I can.
That's awesome. So, um, tell me, what did you do before you became an insurance agent, and what had you ultimately decide to go that way?
Well, it's a funny story.
That's what
So,
I hear. Funny stories.
so I was in outside sales for years. I used to sell bulk fuel to trucking companies down like McCarty area. Then I was a stay at home. After that, when I was doing that, I got pregnant like back to back. I had my two boys. I actually had three boys, but the last two I had kind of 22 months apart. And so I this after the second one, I just went ahead and stayed home for 7 years and was a stay at home mom. So
Okay.
then when I started getting back out into the workforce, hopefully this will encourage any stay-at-home moms that thinks they can't get back out in the workforce. Um, as I got back out in the workforce, I noticed like the jobs that I was getting, they would look at my resume. On my resume it didn't look good, but I know who I am. I know my worth as well, right? So I was getting jobs like receptionist or, just I knew that I was not gonna be there long because I knew I would get bored, right? Um, so I decided I went with this company selling life insurance, and it was life insurance door to door.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I got
it was
I got
horrible. It was
I got approached by
terrible.
those guys.
Yeah. So I said, all right, I'm gonna just do this and learn everything I can learn, and I'm gonna do it for a year. Well, I didn't last 2 months. I did not last 2 months. So I went and got the rest. So that was my life license that I was getting, life and health license. So then I went after I left that company. I went ahead and got my property and casualty license. So after that, once I got my license, I just started interviewing with different companies, Farmers, Allstate, State Farm. I went and talked to all of them just to kind of see where they were offering. I did eventually go with the Farmers Agency. Um, at that time, farmers, we could come in with zero down payment and start, organically with zero policies and build our way up. It's a complete different contract now. Um,
So you started initially before having the Lawrence agency, you initially started your own farmers branch, I guess?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It was the Lawrence Agency, a farmer's agent kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And then, so I've just spun off from there and gone to where I can broker out
Yeah.
um, independently. Yeah.
There is something to be said for working for yourself and not working for other people. That's I mean, it's an amazing feeling to know that any, um, anything that you do or you gain is because you have to go out and get it. Like
Right.
there's a different type of feel when, one, there's pressure to do it, right? Because it's
Right.
all on you. If you don't make it happen, then at the end of the day, you're not going to have very much left at the end, right? However, once you get to a good space, and in everything that I've seen you do at all of our veteran events, and I've been around town. I know a lot of people in the industry around town, and I don't think maybe 60% of the people I've ever talked to that are in the industry of like title or wherever, right? Agents, all kinds of people. For you to have your own private agency, a lot of people know who you are because you don't run into the door to go, you really need this insurance. Let me give it to you. Like you always, that's why I like working with you. Just like with us, we lead with education. You do the same thing. You want people to understand what they're buying. And that's an important piece. But before that, like it's a tough rack to sell life insurance, by the way.
That it is.
Hey,
Yes.
do you mind if I talk with you about buying this policy? Because you know, one day you're going to die and you're going to need this money. People
Right.
will be like, what? Like, no, I don't think I could do that either. But
Yeah. Yeah.
moving on, let's talk, life is better than worrying about what happens after. But yeah, it's interesting. So as an insurance agent, you own your own, you come through. Like what kind of things have you seen? What's been the most significant changes? Let's start there. What's been the most significant
Insurance.
changes in getting a home insurance policy
Mhm.
from, you know, 5 years ago to today? Because I
Right.
know within that time frame,
Yeah.
there's been a massive amount of changes. And this is where that comes into, I'm going to call my insurance guy. I'm going to call my company. I'm going to say, hey, I need to get insurance. They're going to give you a quote. You'll be like, man, that seems really high. And most insurance agents are going to go, well, that's the premium. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll pay it. But they have no idea, right? Like
Right.
what those major changes are that helped affect them. And what was interesting, I know you're going to go into it, is the ones that you can't control, is the ones
Yeah.
that is like, just throw your hands in the air.
Right. 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 Yeah. So 5 years ago, it was a lot easier to insure a home versus today. So, just so the listeners know, we're in Houston, Harris County. That's one of my biggest markets, right? Harris County,
Mm-hmm.
Fort Bend County, going down to the coast, right? So, those have completely different criterias with underwriting as well. So, Harris County uh, insurance and Fort Bend are the highest for home insurance and auto insurance, are the highest in the state of Texas, right? So their underwriting is very tough, right? A lot of companies don't want older homes in Harris County and Fort Bend. Their roofs are the number one claim, so you have to have a newer roof. The magic number across the board is less than 12 years old. Okay, they say 15, but 12 is really the across the board the number.
Yeah, that's what's going to give you the best track because you'll still have a couple years of life left in it.
Right,
So at least the insurance company's going to, I don't know, they'll make a little bit in the premiums from what the borrower's paying without having a claim.
right.
So so going to that. So
Okay.
I mean, obviously we live in Texas,
Hmm.
but like around the country, is it the same kind of thing? Like there's counties and states
Yeah.
and all that where they're more expensive than others, and what kind of factors like?
Yeah.
What are the factors that make Harris County and Fort Bend County the most expensive?
So the factors are that so about the insurance, it's all about the risk, right? About filing a claim. That's what we buy it for, right? We buy it
Yep.
for in case we ever have to file a claim to protect our possessions, right? Your
Yep.
home. Let's talk about
Yeah,
home.
we're betting on having the claim to be able to be there, and the insurance company's betting that you'll never have to do it. So we're going to try to meet in the middle and throw the dice.
Right, exactly. So really we buy insurance for if my house burns down, they're gonna pay to fix it. I mean, it's for catastrophic, right? So that So the things that go into Harris County and Fort Bend, we'll talk about a little bit for home insurance and why it's the highest in the state of Texas is because it's all about the risk factor of filing claims, right? So Harris
Hmm.
County, what are we, the fifth largest county in the country?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
fourth or fifth, right? So our population, we have, and I think we're number one with population, or maybe I'm type vice
Like
versa.
density, maybe like per capita or something like that.
Area, yeah, area wise, we're like the biggest, and population, we're like the fourth, or I forget what the criteria or that is, but that's part of the factor, right? So with the insurance, so in Harris County, there's a lot. So if one company insured all these houses in Harris County, their risk is huge. All they need is one hurricane, one Cat
Yeah,
5 to
yeah,
run up and
yeah.
wipe out these companies, right? Because it would literally, I mean, so after Harvey, insurance companies got together here in Houston. All the big wigs and of all these big companies got together and had a conference and said if there was a Cat 5 that came up the port of Houston and wiped all that out, it would drive these companies out of business, right? Because of the risk factor. That's the number
Yeah.
one reason,
And
right?
that's based off of even if someone has the highest deductible they can get to get the cheapest rate, even though that person would be paying a $1,000 deductible. I mean, if you've got 50,000 homes, yeah, you made 50 grand, but you just paid out millions, right? And
That's
that's what they were kind of looking at.
right. That's exactly it. That's exactly
Yeah.
it. And here, where we're at, the roofs are the number one claim, right? Because we have a lot of wind and hail, right? And so we get a lot of those claims. That's the number one claim for homes for us going all the way down to the coast, any kind of
Hmm.
wind and hail. That's why we have a two. So here in Houston, we have two deductibles. You've seen it probably. It's called an all perils deductible. Then we have a wind and hail deductible. Some
Hmm.
companies even have a third one that is for hurricane only, right? Not
Yeah.
all companies do that, but some of them
I
do.
would imagine if you live in a place like Corpus Christi, Texas, or Galveston, where you're completely, utterly right on the Gulf, or even anywhere in the country, living in the coast of Florida and Miami or whatever, you're probably going to have those same, a
Yeah,
couple different deductibles based off the risk. Again,
right,
everything's about risk with
exactly. Yeah,
insurance, but the risk of that hurricane coming up in through the Gulf versus coming out of the Atlantic versus coming wherever is just a higher probability that it's going to go your way, right? And so,
right,
it's the same deal. Like if you live in that Gulf Coast region, they call us the Gulf Coast, and the Gulf Coast is an amazing place to live. They got the best food, they got the best, atmosphere and culture and all that, but they got the worst insurance rates because
yes,
I mean, although it's an amazing place to live, like there is a lot of risk that comes with it. From what is it, June 15th to November 15th? Like
yeah,
you're on pins and needles. Every day that the weatherman comes on, you're like, oh my God, there's like a red circle, like all the way off the coast of Africa. Is it coming this way? What's going to happen?
right,
And, being in the real estate industry, things like that hamper whether or not you're going to be able to close the deal on time, right? As soon as
right,
that storm hits a certain latitude or longitude in the Gulf of Mexico or in the Atlantic, and it's nationwide. Like as soon as that
right,
storm hits a certain parameter in latitude and longitude, insurance companies are going to go, we ain't issuing
yep,
nothing. We're done. And
right,
unless you've already got the quote and the premium set up to close, yeah, you're going to get delayed. I mean, it was after Harvey, but I think it was Rita and another. There was two a couple years ago that came back to back, right?
mhm,
And one of them went directly to Louisiana. Like it turned, but here in Houston, you weren't like no mortgage lenders, realtors, insurance agents, nobody was doing business, and it didn't even come here. And I didn't understand it at first until they told me it hit that part in the Gulf where it's 50-50. It could come here or it could go there. So since that
right,
risk is there, completely shut down. I was like, what? And then
yeah,
right after that, another one comes through, and you're like, oh my
right.
goodness.
Right. So as soon as it gets in the Gulf, they'll shut everything. I can't write anything for property. It's not just homes, right?
Yeah.
Any kind of property they put a moratorium on. That's
Yeah.
auto insurance, anything like that. Now, a lot of the companies will write a liability, policy during that time because it's just a liability. It's not property. So anything that's
Yeah.
dealing with property, which is kind of okay. So here's the funny thing that a lot of people don't know: when there's a hurricane in the Gulf, I can still sell flood insurance all day, every day, all day,
Really?
every day. But because FEMA has a 30-day uh,
That's right. So that
30-day
policy had to
wait
have been
on it,
active 30
right?
days prior to the storm coming.
Yeah, 30 days. So I can write it
Yeah.
when there's everybody's like, "Oh, you can't write flood insurance." I'm like, "Yeah, I can write it all day long, but you have to wait 30 days. It's not active for 30 days." So they
Okay. And so is that the reason that insurance companies put a moratorium on their home insurance or auto insurance and things like that is because the moment that policy is issued, like if something happens in an hour, you can make a claim. Whereas with the flood part, you have to wait 30 days. So
yes,
I mean, that's
that
probably the
is
difference.
correct. So
Okay.
just we'll take kind of something that like when someone's closing on a home. I'm going to bind. So I have a bound policy. Once that bound policy is bound, is what we call it. It's an actual contract. So say today's the February 16th. Say I made it effective for February 20th, right? Because that's when y'all are going to close.
Hmm.
And something happened on February, say we'll say February 20th. It's an active policy even before they paid it because it's legally bound. So yeah, that's why they put a moratorium. If we've not already bound policy, if it's just a quote, they're stopping that when there's
So
a
then
moratorium.
that's the difference. Then if the policy's been bound, then
Correct.
those people, and again, mortgage lenders put moratoriums on doing loans to close houses if there's a storm in there as well. It's not just insurance. Anybody that's going to give away a significant amount of money or put a lot of risk on the table, they kind of hold off for a bit. And
Yeah.
sometimes, buyers and consumers, they're like, but I don't have anywhere to live after the 30th. And I'm like, well, depending on what happens with this hurricane, it might be a blessing in disguise for everybody. Like you just never know. But, at the same time, it's crazy. Like that goes back to, again, we're in Texas. So, like in Houston, Harvey hits Houston many years ago. And I mean, Harvey was
Hey,
for
remember it
Houston.
stayed over us for like
Yeah,
5 days.
so Harvey to Houston was Katrina to New Orleans.
Right.
And, I guess
They even
luckily, if
did.
you want to call it.
Yeah, Harvey did more damage than Katrina
Yeah, yeah,
did.
well, if you
Yeah.
want to call me lucky, I went through both. So, yeah, I got
Yeah,
the
you're
notches,
lucky.
right? But the difference, Katrina in New Orleans, when it came up and through, it was massive and it hit. But the problem in there was the canal system in New Orleans, how much water was being spun from Lake Pontchartrain. If you're familiar with Louisiana down there in New Orleans, you got the big
Yeah.
lake that's like right above New Orleans. It's Lake Pontchartrain, that lake water spinning around and coming back and being rushed, and then the water was coming up from the Mississippi river when it was all coming in. The pressure was just too much for the levees, and that's what broke it. It wasn't the fact that the storm had high wind. I mean, there was wind damage, but it was the pressure on those levees that broke. Whereas, like you said, in Harvey, it sat here for a week and took a vacation and dumped all this rain. And so
For
uh I,
what was it, like 10 days? It would go, remember, it would go out
yeah,
and then
yeah.
strengthen and come back in.
Yep. And so it was like, I don't know. I've
It's
heard so many
crazy.
different numbers. Just call it 1 million gallons of water. I'm sure it was more than that, but like a
Yeah.
million gallons of water fell down and all over when you take the amount of there. I tell a lot of people all the time that are looking for houses, like their first question all the time is like, well, did that house flood in Harvey? Well, Harvey was a long time ago, but you have to also understand that if you dump 1 million gallons of water anywhere in the country, it's going to flood unless you're in the mountains of North Carolina, and those people are going to watch everything below them flood.
Right.
If it's got any kind of flatland area at all, like the water's got to go somewhere, but it's going to take time. And those are, I don't know what they call it, once in a lifetime storms that sit there and sit, once in every 50 years or whatever. And I think you might be able to help me here because you are the flood person. I know that for a fact. But so we look at the flood map. So like right after Harvey in the real estate industry, the floodplains changed, right?
Mhm.
Everybody said they changed it for Harvey, but I heard that change is already being done before Harvey because flood changes take time. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. They were already changing the flood map prior to Harvey, but Harvey just kind of kicked everything off. So now they've actually been changing the flood map every year.
Oh, okay.
Just a little bit and a little bit. It used to happen maybe 3 to 5 years prior to Harvey, right?
And that's what I was thinking. And then, those urban legends. Harvey did it, so now you gotta check it every day. And I was like, okay, well, Harvey made us change, but like everywhere in Texas changed. Like Lubbock doesn't care what happened in Houston for the flood map. You know what
Right,
I mean? Like
right. Exactly.
it's gonna change regardless.
Yeah, right, 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 right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I tell that to people still. People were like, "Oh, well, the house didn't flood at Harvey, so I'm good." I'm like, "What?" I'm always like, it blows my mind. Like, this is Houston, it doesn't matter. We don't have to have a Harvey for it to
Yeah,
flood,
the
right?
tax day floods because it rained a little bit.
Right. Tax
Yeah.
day flood. We're always having flood
Yeah.
here for it doesn't have to be a hurricane
Yep.
or even a tropical storm can flood too. We've known that
Yeah.
before
Yep.
too.
I
So yeah,
remember.
the flood map changes. It's been changing almost every year since Harvey. Just a little bit. My theory. It's only a theory. Is that all of Harris County might actually be in a flood map eventually because
Hmm.
it's just going like this a little bit, which is weird. It doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't know how they draw it because some of the houses that were flooded for 2 weeks during Harvey are now out of the flood map that don't make no sense to me. None at
Yeah,
all.
I think that, and that's going back to that, like you just said, like people will come tell you, like, my house didn't flood in Harvey, so I don't need flood insurance, right?
Right.
Like I said, I went through Katrina in New Orleans, and I was still in the Navy at the time, and then I transferred to Dallas to do recruiting. So I lived in Arlington. In Arlington, if you've ever been, it's got hills. It's hilly in Arlington. I
Right.
bought my house in Arlington, and I called the people and said I want flood insurance, and they were like, you understand that like you're not in a flood zone at all. I said, that's awesome. But I just left Louisiana and you might have heard of it. Katrina hit. And yeah, I want flood insurance. The lady was like, no problem. It's cheap, but we'll give it to you. But what I learned is, irregardless, like if a pipe busts under your house, there are some cases where like the company will be like, oh, well, I mean, the pipe bursting caused it to flood. You don't have flood insurance, therefore it's not covered or whatever, right? Like if the water busted in the yard and rolled from the yard into the home versus like a pipe inside the house busting, like they could categorize it in a whole bunch of different ways. So I tell everybody, just get all the insurance you can, right? Just get it all. Like you need all the different insurances because if you don't have those, then it's going to be an issue.
What happened?
No, it's okay. So, like I was saying, when you have all those things that happen, I tell a lot of people to just get like flood insurance is flood insurance. At the end of the day, and I don't know, it's probably a little bit more now, but let's call it $650 a year. Let's just call it that number. $650 a
It's a lot.
year for flood insurance. If you're not in a flood zone, it's pretty cheap. Even if you pay $1,500 a year for flood insurance, to have it and not need it is great, but to not have it and need it is horrible because
Right.
now all this stuff you've worked your entire life for and all the possessions that you have, like you can't replace those just off of because if your house flooded, homeowners insurance ain't going to cover it, and that's why I was saying like if a
Right.
pipe busts in your yard and water comes in, they could say that's flood, even though there was no storm, there was no rain. A pipe at the street for the city bust comes in your house, it's flood, and if you don't have flood, it's not covered. And then at the same token, wind and hail. I'm not in a place where I need it, but this last weekend in College Station, it was hailing like crazy. I was out in the middle of a
Mhm.
lacrosse field coaching a game in a hailstorm at A&M, and like, let's say it never really happens there, but the moment that it does, now you can't replace your roof because you didn't have the coverage, right? Like, I just tell everybody, like you said it earlier, insurance is there to protect you. You're gambling, you're never going to have the problem, right? As an insurance company going, okay, we can do the claim. But you, as the consumer, you're rolling the craps dice going, if I do crap out with a seven, like I need to make sure that I have the protection and the coverage that I need. And so that's with everything
Yeah.
wind and hail, contents. My daughter lives in Indiana. She's got renter's insurance. Like people Like, I rent an apartment, I don't need insurance, right? Like, that's crazy. Like, what if something happens, right? You don't own the apartment. They're not going to pay for your stuff.
Right,
It's bananas.
right. A lot of people don't even realize that. And let me touch on something that you said. So if that happened, a city pipe bust and your house was
Mhm.
flooded, for it to be considered a flood, okay, a flood, their definition, two or more properties need to be flooded.
Mm.
Usually during a hurricane or storm, that's not an issue. But for that instance right there, if only one home was flooded, they would not consider it
So
a
then your
flood.
homeowner's insurance would cover that.
Depends on your homeowners. If it's covered, yeah,
Okay.
with that too. So every homeowner's insurance, that's a good point there. Not every homeowner's insurance is created equal. What that would fall under, if it didn't flood two or more properties, it would fall under water backup sump. This is always an added
And that's,
coverage. Most
yeah, there you
policies
go.
don't have.
And but you know what? Here's the thing. I don't understand this. And maybe you can help me. You've
Mhm.
done insurance for a long time, which means I know you've talked to hundreds of thousands of people about policies. You've issued more policies than you haven't. There's been some that you didn't, but overall, I'm going to go buy a $350,000 house, the most expensive purchase that I'm ever going to make in my life, and I'm going to
Mhm.
skimp on the insurance. So I don't want to
Exactly.
pay. And so that's what's crazy. When you go to buy a home, more people today see this interest rate that is it, interest rates are going up. It's a reality of how things work. And as they're going up, these people see that happening and they're going, okay, well, my rate is XYZ, or my friend got this rate and yours is way higher, so I don't want to do it. And I've had more people just in Texas, and it happens in other parts of the country too, but Texas is a great example. And I'll tell them, you do realize that your property taxes and insurance are going to be almost double what your premium of principal and interest is, right? Like, it's expensive to live in Houston. Granted, yep, a $350,000 house here will cost you $750,000 in another state. But the reality on how it's different is, like, it is more expensive to live here. It just is, like, especially in Houston, because you've got the opportunity for wind, hail, hurricane. I mean, it snowed a couple times, right? Like, tornadoes, like, it's all, you have the opportunity for all of it. So I just don't, tell me what do you think, and why do you think people are just so willing to, well, I want the cheapest deductible possible, so I'm not going to take the water backup, or I'm not going to take the elevated wind and hail, right? If it's not required coverage, I don't want it. And how much really does that make the policy go up if they take those?
Well, depending on how the
Mm-hmm.
age of the house. So if it's an older home, unlike like a car, the older the car is, the cheaper the insurance. It's the opposite with home
Mm-hmm.
insurance. The older it is, the higher the insurance is
Because the
going to
less
be.
likely it's going to
The home,
fall over one day, right?
right? It's like a ticking time bomb of a
Yep.
claim, right? And so water backup is one of the big things. Mold is another big thing for the older
Yeah.
homes, like if they had water damage or anything like that. So to add to a older home water backup, it could be up to $300 a year. A newer home, it's maybe $150 to
Yeah. Again,
$100.
so
So
let's just take and look at the dynamics of that, though. Even if it's an older home, and
yeah.
I want to have water backup just in case, I'm paying $25 a month more to protect this thing I spent $350,000 on. It's bananas. I just don't understand it. But you're willing, and see, this is where it gets crazy. As a consumer, you're willing to pay points to reduce your interest rate. Like, you'll give your lender $15,000, right, to reduce your interest rate. Okay, because you want to win there.
Mhm.
Like, you're going to give them $15,000 to reduce your payment by 12, but you won't spend 25 extra dollars a month to protect your investment. I just don't. It's really fun. It's funny to see the value of money to people, and how they look at things. And I think a lot of that changes, especially in the stuff that we've done together when we're educating people and talking to them. I've never heard anybody, when you've talked to them about insurance and all of our seminars we've done, get crazy like, oh, that's like, I don't believe it. That's crap and all these other things. I've seen so many more people go, okay, well, can you explain that to me? Why is that the case? Or why am I being held, one of the ones that I heard the other day, because we just did one last week, was if that house, the owner of that house made a ton of claims before you bought the house, then that could affect the policy that you're going to have. And the homeowner's like, or the new people are like, why is that fair? Well, from an insurance company standpoint, and I'm guessing at this point, I'm going to try and be smart for a second. If that house has had multiple claims on it, even if the owner was claim happy, right? Like anything that goes wrong, they were going to claim on it. Now the insurance company's going, this house has problems, right? So you're going to pay more. So my question would be, what if as a homeowner, and I've never thought to ask this until now, but as a homeowner, I move in, the house had a lot of claims before, the history was bad. And then I lived there 2 years, 3 years. I make no claims. Will that make my premium go down? After showing that as a new homeowner, I'm not going to be as claim happy as the other guy, or we just got lucky and didn't have to do it.
Yeah, in theory, it should make it go down depending on what the claim was.
Okay.
Okay. So water claims, big deal. Big deal. Especially if they're over, I think the number is like $10,000. So really the amount the insurance pays will, if it's a higher number, it will stay on the record
Okay.
longer. So they're little ones. And depending on, okay, so let's take that same scenario. And depending on what the claims were and how old they were, and each company has their own underwriting guidelines. So some of them hold them for 5 years claim history. Some of them hold them for 3 years claim history. So eventually, the answer that we're getting to eventually that would make them fall off, and it should make your premium go down. But okay, on the same thing, I've had this happen numerous times. Same thing. Your roof is getting older. Okay. Your roof is getting 12
It's
years old. These flames are falling off. You're not, wait, I'm not seeing any price reduction
okay,
here.
but it's washing out because now
It,
the roof is at a higher risk than the
yes.
the cracked window that you could have gone to Window World and paid $150 for, and you decided to pay $1,000 deductible on. So that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting to
Yeah.
know those things because I always, you always wonder, how people look at it because it's just a different rack. So tell me,
Right. And we touched a little bit on like where you're from your house and the home insurance wise, where your fire station is to your house. This is
oh,
what we
yeah,
talked a
that's
little bit
right. You were
about.
talking about that.
Yeah, something that is you can't control that, right? This all has to do with your local fire department that services your home. What kind of trucks they have, I don't even know what kind of trucks they have to make it. It's called a protection class on the
Hmm.
insurance side, and it's a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, one being the best, right? So anything in between will factor in how much your premium is. So people always say, "Hey, well, why is my premium so high?" Well, the protection class could be a 10 or a 6 or anything in between. The higher it is, the more your insurance. This is something you can't control, but it's your local fire department. Things that factor in is if they're volunteer or are they
Yep.
paid. So it's weird the things that factor into that protection class, and that you can't control
And
that at
so
all.
so things like that protection class and proximity to the fire station, claim history.
Mm.
I know that's in Texas, but is that like an industry standard for insurance now, or all over they look at that the same way? So like even if I got
Yeah.
insurance in Montana, they're still going to look at how far the fire station is and like how many claims have been on the home. That's like a standard now for the industry.
Yeah, that's a standard. It's called protection class. It's also what is starting to be standard, but it doesn't affect us because we don't have it here because we're coastal. but they have a wildfire
Oh,
score
well, I
too.
mean, it's
That's
huge.
pretty
If you
crazy.
live in California, you got to
Yeah,
have it, right? And to be honest,
right. So it's very similar to what we feel, but we're not factored into a
Austin
wildfire
just went
score.
through it.
Yes, yeah. Austin has a
They have to.
wildfire
Well, I mean,
score.
I just saw on the news a couple weeks ago where I don't know they tried to do a control burn in a state park, and why we would do a control burn in the middle of like the summer or when the heat is like 90 degrees. I mean, okay, I got it. There's other times in Texas we can do that, like when it's the real winter in Texas for the 3 weeks in January and February we have. But like they had that fire, and they were almost. I almost felt like I was watching a news of like a story in California where they were thinking of evacuating people and moving them because that fire was getting closer. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy.
Yes. Yeah, that's another factor that's nationwide too.
Well, I
Is
mean, I would imagine if
um,
you get up into the Northwest, right? Washington, Oregon,
right.
California, Montana, North Dakota, states like that still have a lot of land out there, and it doesn't take much if something sets fire. Like it's just different. Like in Houston, what's going to burn? It's a concrete jungle. It's just like New York. Like
I know,
you
right?
wouldn't have it, but I
Yeah,
mean, if I guess maybe in Houston, if you were at a place close to like Lake Livingston or New Caney up there for the state parks, like it might run into you there because there's a lot of wooded area
yeah,
up there. But yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even think about like. But the more you learn, the more you know. Like, oh my gosh, wildfire, right?
right.
It's just
Wildfire and Earth movement. That's another one we don't
yeah.
really factor in that, but because we don't have earthquakes or mudslides or
Yeah, I'm
any of
sure
that
that'd
stuff.
be
So
huge in
Earth
like
movement,
Hawaii and California again on the coast.
California, big time.
Yeah,
Yeah, hmm
that's
yeah.
crazy. So, uh, let's tell everybody what service is your son in?
He is in the National
Okay,
Guard. I'm gonna brag. I'm gonna brag on him a little bit. He is in school. He's due to graduate like June 16th. He is a Black Hawk pilot, search and rescue pilot.
nice,
So he's graduating there, and hopefully, I'm hoping he'll get to come back to Ellington. But they don't do Blackhawks in Ellington, so most likely he'll go to San Antonio.
nice.
But at least he's in Texas.
So he's gonna
So
go live wherever that's at. So is he like a full time
right.
guardsman? So he'll be on full time, or is he still like
So
the
how
drilling time
he
inactivated?
he's yeah, so he's actually in reserve
Mm-hmm.
activated right now, but because he's going to school on it, he's full
Yeah.
time, but he's still kind of technically reserve or whatever. And how he was in Ellington, so the job he had at Ellington, he was a helicopter
Yep.
mechanic on the Apaches. And that was a full time civilian job, but the criteria is that you had to be in the
Yep.
reserve. So yes and yes is
Yeah, I
that. So
got a
yes,
couple
he's in the
friends in that.
reserves, and yes, he's full time.
Yeah, I got a couple
Yeah,
friends that do the same for like the Air National Guard. So they're civilian mechanics, but they're also Air National Guard members because if they need to deploy, like they don't all call somebody
right,
else. They want that same crew that's familiar and there, and it's just the requirement. Like we'll give you a civilian job too. You get paid every day, but you got to be on both sides. But that's cool. So he's gonna,
right. And there's a
yeah,
criteria they can only live like in a 50-mile radius of where
you
their
got to be able to
office
go when
is,
you're
or
needed.
wherever there's
Well, that's
yeah.
awesome.
So he's like on
Well,
standoff.
congratulations. That's
So
a cool deal. Like Black Hawk pilot, that's like a F-14 pilot in the Navy. They're the rock stars, man.
oh
Those guys,
yeah,
they get to do all the cool stuff. That's the stuff you see that
yeah,
movies are made out of, right? People are flying those things,
yeah,
so everybody wants to see. So
yeah.
what made him decide to do the National Guard?
He was in the army for 4 years, and he was stationed in Afghanistan, and then or he went. It was deployed in Afghanistan and stationed in Germany for about a
Oh,
year or 2 years.
Germany.
So he didn't really enjoy the army too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he got out, he was like, okay, I'm free, I'm this. And then, once you get out, I think you kind of miss it. And I think he did too. So he went back into the reserves, and now he loves the
Right.
reserves. It's kind of different he's, you have to be an officer to be in the pilot program. So he was just infantry in the army. So, I mean, it's complete different worlds for him,
Yeah, so I think that when you look at how that world works, there's so many people, because I was a recruiter for many years in the Navy before I retired, and we would have veteran after veteran walk in the door and go, I got to get back in. I'm like, what? Like, yeah, I got
Yeah.
out, and I shouldn't have got out. I want to get back in on active duty. And then half the time we had to push them towards the reserves because in some cases they'd been out too long, or you know
Oh,
their discharge code doesn't match to come straight back to active duty, or whatever. Like, they would have to go to another route. And then, how many people do you meet that did their 4 years, right, and then go, oh, I should have just retired. Like, well, you did 4 years. Like, no, but you don't understand. Like, I see it now and talk to a ton of people. It the military is just like every other job. There's going to be good days. There's going to be days that you love it, traveling, you get to see the world. It's awesome. But you're going to have a whole bunch of days where you're like, this is not
it
fun. Yeah,
sucks. I
for
hate it.
sure.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, we do that in our own
exactly,
jobs,
like,
right?
you're not going to always like who you work with all the time. You're not going to like your bosses all the time. You're not going to like the work that you have to do. You're not going to like that you have to do extra work that other people didn't get done, but it's a reality of life. And so, I think the difference, though, is people that are in that military environment and come out to the civilian part of it. When you get to that side and you see that this needs to be done because these people didn't do it, and you never see these people that didn't do it there making sure it gets done, and then you've got other people that are the new people have to take up the slack for people that don't do their job. That is, I think, where people start
Mhm.
to miss the military mind frame, because in the military, it's like everybody's staying. If one person doesn't do it,
Yeah.
everybody did it. And so you learn that
Yeah.
accountability to go, okay, well, if this is part of what I need to do, if I don't get my part done, then everyone's going to suffer.
And everybody
Correct.
suffers. Yeah.
There's not a lot of that in the civilian
So
world.
therein lies where the work
Yeah.
ethic
Yeah.
is, right? There's the work
Yeah, there's
ethic.
not a lot of that when you get out. I mean, it's in some places,
No.
you can see it, but for the most part, like, it's a struggle to understand sometimes the outlook that people have to how they approach things. It's just, we spoke
Yeah.
a different language, but that's good, man. Well, congratulations. Are you going? Or do you get to go to graduation? And second part,
I hope
do you
so.
get to be flown in on a
I hope
Black Hawk? Because that would be awesome.
that would
Yeah,
be cool. Now, I will put in that request. I'll put in that request. I'm not sure I
yeah.
will be
When he
there.
comes back to
I'm
Texas,
hoping, with stupid COVID, I'm hoping I can be there at graduation. So
well, I
we
do
don't
know
know.
that a lot of things in the military, like everywhere else, is starting to kind of ease up a little bit. For a long time, being in the Navy, we're a little bit traditionally different than the other services, because we do like I've talked to a lot of Army guys since I've gotten out, and especially on the team I work with now, we got a couple Army guys. And when we talk about our retirements in the Navy versus how they retired in the Army, completely different ball game. Like, I don't know, they look at how we do it, and they're like, that's crazy. I wish we did it the same way, because we use all the naval
Yeah.
traditions for retirement, whereas they don't really do the same. But for a long time in COVID, like, you couldn't even do a retirement for just too many people. But now people are able to start doing it again. It's starting to come up. So I'm sure that you'll be able to go to graduation. You just got to get there.
I know.
They'll
Oh, I
send the
will.
Black Hawk. I'm telling
I
you.
will. I have to hitchhike. I'll be
Send the
there.
Black Hawk. Come pick me up. I need that VIP treatment. That's what I would ask for. That's a good time, man. That's awesome. So
Yeah. Yeah.
what's in the future for you? What kind of things are you involved in now? Is there any kind of organizations or charities, or is there anything that you do that you'd like everybody to know about, or future plans for the Lawrence Agency? You guys going nationwide soon? What are you gonna do?
No, I mean, the future plans for the Lawrence Agency is just to build it, right? Build. It's always we can always use more business. That's just how we
Yep.
go. Uh, I do plan on hiring more agents and just building my agency. That's really what it is. For things that I'm involved in, I'm involved with a lot of stuff politically. I'm very big into the Republican Party, and I spend a lot of my time and looking at campaigns and stuff like
Yep.
that. So that's a hobby for me. I love to do anything for the veterans. I feel I'm a mom of
Yep.
one, right? So that motherly towards any of the things that we do
Absolutely,
with the
man.
veterans. Yeah. So you
Yeah, I'm
there?
here. Whew.
Was it me? Are you?
It was me. All of a sudden, the computer just started saying, "We're restarting." It's like, all right, cool. So, what I was saying before is that there's going to be a barbecue cook-off at the VFW post in Tomball Post 2427 in uh,
What is
April
it?
the ninth.
April 9th,
Yeah, so
you
it's
said?
a just a barbecue competition. It's IBC sponsored. There'll be some vendors at the event, selling some things. There's going to be a raffle. There's going to be silent auctions. Believe there's going to be a cornhole tournament after all the barbecue charging is done. So there's a lot going on. It's open to the public. If you want to come hang out and see the festivities, there are going to be food trucks there, all that stuff. Because in this type of
Oh,
barbecue competition, these guys are making like one thing to get judged.
yeah.
So they bring in food trucks so people can eat and just be around and hang out and then watch the dudes jump up to their walk up music when they're winning. It's a pretty good time, but for sure.
So it's the
Yep,
VFW
VFW and
Tomball?
Tomball. So if you're looking for that one, and then if that one doesn't work, there's another one that's pretty big in May. It'll be Memorial Day weekend. That's a 2-day one. That's massive, and so it's the same kind of thing. People come out, so just part of those community events. There'll be a lot of organizations there to help, and that's where I'm a member, so I like to talk about them as much as I can. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My son's a member at the VFW in San
nice.
Antonio.
Yeah,
So
we see those
yeah,
guys
I've been there.
every time we go to the conferences and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That one's nice there.
yeah. So going from there, I mean, any other plans or grow the agency? Are you hiring right now? Are you looking for people?
I'm not hiring currently. I do have another agent in my office, and but I will. I think this year we'll be
Cool,
hiring another agent just to kind of run things. That's kind of my plan. It's not in the wheelhouse right currently, but I do. That's one of my goals this year is to get another
nice.
agent in there for sure.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
I told you, man, you're going to be nationwide one day. You should be. I mean,
I hope
as much
so.
as you do for everybody. I mean, when you think about
Thanks.
professionals in an industry, you know, I've worked with a lot of people, and a lot of people, like I said, they want to help you, but they want to sell you a policy, right? Like they want to do, like you said, the business end. I'm always looking for more business, and everybody is. But the difference is how you get that business. Are you going to just sell the policy or be like the Lawrence agency and go, hey, well, here's some factors on why your policy premium is going to be higher for this property. You just give them the
Mhm.
factors. And in reality, a lot of times, $25, $30 more because of the factors you can't control, but at least they know why, right? Like, not that it's going to keep them from purchasing a home, it's not going to keep them from purchasing a policy, but just knowing why, people would probably pay more
Yeah.
money if they knew why, right? And it makes more
Yeah.
sense. And so that's what I like hearing you talk about all this stuff because you not only have the answers, but you also have the reasons why, and you're patient to explain. There's not a lot of people that want to do that, so thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I mean, other than that, it was really really good talking to you today. I had a great time. I'm so glad that you were able, to do it because, like everybody in the world today, everyone's busy. But having the opportunity to talk to you was great. Do me a favor, give everybody your contact information so that way if they have insurance questions or they're looking to get a new policy, I'd like you to give them your information so they can reach out to you if they want and go from there. Yeah.
Okay. My name is Cyndi Lawrence. My let me give you my office number. It's 281-727-0030. And let me touch base. I think most of the people that are listening to you are maybe veterans. And I know veterans are very loyal to USAA, but just know that USAA brokers out their home insurance as well. Auto insurance, you cannot beat USAA. And I will agree with that with everyone. They have great rates. They're the ones that handle your claims. But when it comes to home insurance, especially in the coastal area, USAA brokers those companies
Mm-hmm.
out. Just exactly the same companies, some of them the same companies that I broker out. So if you're in the market looking for home insurance, give me a call. My number is 281 727 0030. That's my office. Free quote. And I'll kind of walk you through what exactly that you may need and may
Yeah.
not need. One of the things that I like to set myself different from other insurance agents that I do talk to you. I try to figure out what is important to you versus, my home insurance shouldn't be the same as your home insurance,
Yeah,
Matt,
for sure.
right? It's not, we don't have the same risk. We don't, I'm a single mom. You've got a family. So it should be completely
Yeah.
different, right? Should be. So I don't give cookie cutter policies. I kind of, put it around the actual people of what they
So
need.
that is a great point on the tail end of it, right? There's a ton of veterans that are loyal to the USAAs and the Navy Federals, and all of that stuff is great. But I think the biggest key that people should take away from there would be this: when you go to purchase a home, you talk to 10 lenders because you want to know who's going to give you the best interest rate, or who's going to give you the best customer service, who has taken the time to understand your needs and what you need and what you want and how you want to get there. I don't think enough people do the part of calling a couple of different agencies to make sure that they understand and know what they're getting. And the reality would be this: if you live in Houston, it's beneficial to talk to Cyndi because Cyndi's local. She lives here. She owns her company here. And in some cases, it's just, when you have that nationwide provider, they don't know the little ins and outs of that actual city. They can't go, oh, you're moving to Jersey Village. Well, this is what you're going to need because in Jersey Village, this is what you're going to see. Like an
Right.
insurance agent in whatever city somewhere else doesn't know that. And so it's always great to talk local. And let's be honest, right? If you're talking to a local broker, you're probably going to get a little bit of a better deal in most cases because they have the ability um, to help you in more places than a bigger like brand could, right? And so it's always good. Get
Right.
multiple quotes and go from there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So a story that just happened in the last couple of weeks is I had a client. They had built a house out down in Port Lavaca, right? That's towards the coast for anybody. It's what is it, 45 minutes
Yeah.
from the coast. Port Lavaca, they built it. I did all their builder's risk when they built it. They're about to move in to their house, so once they move in, it should turn into a homeowner's policy instead of a builder's risk. So they were very loyal to USAA, and she told me, we love you, Cyndi, but I'm very loyal to USAA. They couldn't do a builder's risk. You could. That's how we came across you. Anyway, long story short, she calls them. They start doing a quote. Well, they don't really understand. I don't know who she's talking to, where they're at, if they're in Texas or if they're not in Texas, whoever she talks to on the phone, wherever they're at. So they couldn't understand the wind and hail part of it down in Port Lavaca, right? So they go to sell her an insurance policy. She notices it doesn't have wind and hail. They are required to have wind and hail. But the person she talked to did not understand um, the dynamics of going
For
coastal,
sure.
right? Because they're probably just on the phone. They just typed that policy in and everything. So there was a lady that was loyal to USA, left me, came back and said, hey, they can't insure this
And
properly.
so that's another
Okay.
big key, right? And that family found that out probably almost at the time that they were going to balance at the title company to close. And then the lender
They,
said there's no wind and hail on this property and it's in this area and it has to be there. And so I don't think a lot of people
Yeah.
understand or realize either that pick whoever your insurance company is, it doesn't matter. That doesn't mean they can insure you in that area, because there are
Right.
differences in coverage. And if they don't offer that coverage, then they can't insure you, which is another reason that you want to run around and find where all these other agencies are and talk to them. That's why it's so good to go local and get a quote, because they understand the area, right? Like, that's huge. And again, you're going
Right.
to find out eventually. And then the worst part is when they're told they have to pay an exorbitant amount of money over what they're getting, because if that insurance provider doesn't offer that coverage, to your point, they're going to broker that coverage out to still work with you. And when they broker it out, we all know it's more expensive, because now they've got to reach to somebody. They're going to give it. That means they've got to pay for it. And now you got to pay extra so that they can pay their fee. It snowballs. So
Right.
all I encourage people, talk to your local insurance agent. And I mean, we used to be that way in the country, right? Like, we're different now with this
Right.
technology age, and you can reach everybody really quick on a cell phone, or like we're doing right now through video on the computer. But there is something to be said about local. Go talk to your local people that know the city, they know the town, they know the area. Build a relationship. You're going to see them in down the street, and you're going to say hi to them every day. Like, it used to be like, this is my insurance guy. He is, the Katy, Texas insurance dude. His office is over there. I know his wife. I know his kids. Like, I see him at all the community events. And I just think that the faster we can sometimes get back to some of that, the better off we would kind of be, because we would learn again how to like communicate and build relationships. And there's not enough of that. But these home purchases and insurance and mortgages and all that is a huge test to
It's huge.
trust, communication, and expertise at the end of the day. So many times you'll hear people, they got into a mortgage, they got into an insurance policy, and I don't know how many times I've heard, well, I'm just going to go with them because it's too late now. Like, what? You have a choice. You know that, right? Like, you have a choice. But again, it is what it is. That's why I think you're going to be so great. Like, you will go talk to them, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. There's plenty of times, like for lender. Okay, so their DTI, debt to ratio, is like this. So they have to get the cheapest policy. We've got to get the cheapest policy. I do this all day long. So when it for closing purposes, we'll do this. But I have talked to the owner, like, look, this is not a good policy. We've gone with the cheapest to get you in the house because that's the most important thing, right? As soon as it closes, we're going to switch policies and get you
Yeah,
the
yeah,
right
yeah.
one. So I do that all day just to get them to close because that's the most
Sure.
important thing, right? But I also want them to be properly insured. So I have spent many times like, look, this is what you need for the loan from your lender. So let's go. We're going to do this policy, but as soon as you close and you get that key to that house, we're going to switch it to this policy, which is
Yeah,
the
yeah, for
correct
sure.
policy. You know,
Yep. And it's, it's to the benefit of them always. So, well, I
yeah,
mean, we're on
absolutely.
the time for it, Cyndi. I appreciate the time,
Yeah,
the
I do too.
information,
Yeah,
the education. Like, you can't learn enough about stuff like this. And hopefully everybody
yeah,
that listens and sees it, they can reach out and connect with you and ask their questions, because I know that you answer probably a ton of them every day. And then, if there's ever anything that we can do for you, we're here to do it, and just go from there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thanks for having
Yeah.
me.
Thank you. And then tell your son congrats. And I expect a Black Hawk flight
Oh,
too. I'm just saying.
me too. Me
Get you
too.
a tour, skyline tour of the city or something. It's in the budget. He's got to fly it every once in a while anyway. So, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.